And then there's the Malaysian holidays like Malaysia Day and things like that. So there's a lot of public holiday here because of that, which is really, really nice. But also compared to Norway, the legalized paid holiday that you get from work is a lot less. In Norway you have a lot, so here you have a lot less. I think a lot of people who doesn't have so much holiday really appreciate the fact that it's more public holidays, so they get to spend time with family, loved ones, and so on.
The following is a long open conversation with Synne Støhlmacher, Head of Solution Design at Human Inc. We got a chance to sit and talk about many topics, like what is the purpose of design thinking, what does the Agile Manifesto really mean, and which has been her ventures in both Malaysia, Kenya, and Massachusetts. I want to take also a moment to share the following. For everybody who is remembering their loved ones who serve in uniform, I want to wish you a happy Memorial Day weekend. This is On the Lawn with FVR podcast. If you like this thing, feel free to like and subscribe, and to contribute to the channel in the description below. And now, your feature presentation. Eventually, one day, to say like the Joe Rogan experience with a Spotify deal, that would be nice.
That would be the goal. Okay.
Yeah, because it's not about monetizing the content; it's about documenting the stories. So, whenever you feel ready, we can start.
I'm ready. Whenever. And do you want me to look into the camera or like more at you, or how do you normally do it?
Let's pretend the camera is not here, but you can talk, you can watch me here, which is usually better, because when people see the eyes, it's like, what are in the eyes? I don't know. This is a little trick.
Okay, sounds good.
And sometimes when you want to say like a important message,
Boom.
like, hey, tomorrow, or things like that, just watch the camera.
Okay.
All right, I guess we can start. For some reason, they turned the AC off.
Yeah, it's a little bit hotter. You're also wearing a lot of layers.
Yeah, because I was in my little shop, the
And
office
it's
on the level 2.
Super
It was
cold.
Yeah, and then all of the suit and all of this, then going outside and then going back.
Let's take a little breather. We don't have to start right away. Have some water.
Now
Take
I
a
am the one
breath.
taking a chill.
It's okay. Take a little chill. I'm sure you've had a long day. I did too.
Whatever, we can start.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of On the Lawn with FVR. Today we have Synne.
Hi, very nice to meet you.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, of course.
So, people have been trying to see what has been going on recently with new renovations, new buildings, new sounds, but most important, we have guests. And people, when they see you, they want to know a little more about yourself. So, would you like to tell us a little about your story?
Yeah, of course. So I'm originally from Norway, and I've been in Malaysia for about 6 or 7 years now. So quite some time, moving from the cold to the heat, and I absolutely love the temperature. I love the heat. Love the people here. What I do for work, which is also quite suitable with Asia School of Business or ASB, where we're recording. I work for a consultancy called Human Inc., and we do design thinking and innovation for large corporates here in Malaysia. Very fun to be a part of seeing how the industry is moving, how people are moving, and just being a part of working with great people and great companies.
So, you mentioned a keyword right now, design thinking. And some that are unfamiliar will say, is it thinking of designs or designing your thinkings? Can you educate the audience? What is that about?
Of course, yeah. So design thinking is a problem-solving methodology that is very often used to drive innovation. So it's for people to have different tools and techniques and frameworks to have a better process for what innovation can look like. There's other processes out there, but I love design thinking. I'm a design thinker at heart. What it's really about is understanding people on a deep level, so understanding users and their pain points, and then being able to utilize meaningful tools and techniques in a process to design something around those pain points. And in that way, often companies, large, small, startups, corporates, can be NGOs as well, are able to come up with new ways of solving problems, new solutions, products, services, processes, whatever it might be.
So, in the designs of new technologies and new processes, you mentioned that design thinking is one of these areas. Which are the other areas, if I ask?
Yeah, of course. So there's a couple of different processes that can be used for problem solving or innovation. They can either be used in tandem with each other or they can be used separately. So other things are, for instance, Agile is quite famous in product development, and IT can be used very nicely together with design thinking. It's also becoming popular outside of the traditional IT areas where it was developed originally. For process, the famous one is Lean Six Sigma. So there's other type of processes, methodologies out there that you can utilize. But design thinking is the one that I specialize in, together with Agile.
Now, together with Agile and design thinking, I'm repeating this so many words it becomes a topic of the episode, but going towards the person, when that first love with design thinking happened? When you say it's going to be design thinking?
For me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think a lot of people who is in this field stumble upon it. It's becoming an increasingly larger field now that it's more and more important in different parts of the world and also across different companies. But when I first started now, almost 10 years ago, it was still a small field, maybe not as widely known. Not everyone was talking about design thinking like they are today. So I actually stumbled upon it when I was studying in Boston. So you go to MIT, I went to BU for a bit.
Oh, you were
Boston
there.
University, yeah. So neighbors, just across the river. So when I was there, I did entrepreneurship as a part of my master's degree. And I really understood what it is to work for a startup, had some really, really interesting experiences. Then I got the chance to be a part of a venture builder program where we developed some concepts. And later on, I went on to try out those concepts in the real world. And for us, the real world was in Kenya. And at that point, of course, I knew design thinking theoretically because I had been exposed to it in school or in university. And then I also got to practice it through this venture building process. And then coming to the field in Kenya and really seeing the impact, or maybe the things that I thought I knew but I didn't really know, and how important it is to follow the steps of design thinking in terms of really going out and talking to customers, really going out to understand it, not working based on assumptions. Really gave me just an understanding of how important it is as a methodology and how big of an impact it can create if you are talking to customers and if you are working this way in terms of your success rate as a business.
You mentioned that you learned this in Boston and then you practice in Kenya. At the beginning of the episode, you mentioned your origin is from Norway. So I need to ask, how was Jones Synne growing up in Norway?
Okay, well, I think everyone knows that Norway is a very good and happy society. I think we are, I don't know if we're number 2 or 3 on the happiness index now.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, okay, I don't know. They measure it maybe a little bit weirdly. I think there's some discussion there. But I think Norway is feels safe because of the way the society is structured. You have free schooling, you have free education. So I think that takes pressure off family life in some contexts, of course. So I would say for me, I had a very nice family home with a garden, apples. I had a dog.
Which was the name of the dog?
Lola.
Lola.
I had one called Lola, and then later on we had one called Chaos. She was chaotic, so it was a suitable name.
Wow.
So quite typical family life as you would imagine. A lot more sleep than you get in Spain. I heard that Spain is the kids that sleep the least because you have dinner so late.
I don't know about Spain.
Yeah.
Now, from that place to Boston, what made you say it's time to jump the little pond?
Yeah, good question. Actually kind of random. So I was originally studying economics and I thought I wanted to go into macroeconomics. But found a program that let me do my minor of my master's degree that I was doing in Norway in Boston, or a couple of other places. So I had to choose one, and I had to apply, and then I managed to get in. So it was actually to shorten my degree, so I could spend a bit less time in university. As much as I love learning, I think the formal institution of university wasn't 100% my thing. So I wanted to find ways that I could shorten it and still have relevant experiences, and then start working and try to figure out how I could apply some of the things that I had learned.
And in which years you were in Boston?
2015.
Okay. So There was still Tom Brady in the New England Patriots. Yeah.
Could be. I don't know that.
Yeah. And the Red Sox were still okay.
I did go to a couple of their games.
It's kind of close.
It is very close. Baseball is a very long game. I didn't expect it to be so long. Yeah, I had a lot of beers while watching.
And everybody sings "Take Me to the Ball Game" at the beginning of the seventh inning.
Yeah.
Very beautiful.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a good time.
Now, your time in Boston. What made you say is Kenya the place you need to practice?
Yeah, so that was because I managed to, as mentioned, get into this venture builder program. So I was a part of that, and we were working with social entrepreneurship. So trying to figure out ways that we could create an impact in the world, while still hopefully at least having a profit, a small one or some revenue. So that was the challenge that we were working on, and we were also trying to find ways that Norway could leverage either technology or skills in new ways to be able to contribute and create impact. So from there, we created a couple of ventures, and one of them was targeted towards water, which was what I was mainly working on. And then one of the test markets that we decided to see would be Kenya.
Okay, so water as a place to practice the new skills. So how long you were there, and what was the level of change you saw before and after?
In myself?
And also in the impact of the society you were in.
Okay. So I think I was there for on and off for about a year. So I was a bit in Norway, then a bit in Kenya, then a bit in Norway. So something along those lines. I would say I went there with a very big goal in terms of what I wanted to achieve and what we were trying to do. I realized when I was there that I had misunderstood the market, which is very typical for startups. Or for any type of product development, you believe that there's a need or you believe that there's a pain point, but without really going and testing or validating and talking to customers on the ground, it's not going to be certain. You're never going to know for sure. So of course, there's something about just trying to figure that out. So navigating a new world of a business that has corruption to a very different extent than what I'm used to in Norway. Different culture and so on. So that was, of course, the initial challenge. And once we managed to overcome that, then it was more about, can this actually work? And we had misunderstood. I think we had pinpointed the wrong need, and we weren't fully in tune with what customers actually needed.
Okay.
And I think that was a really big lesson for me. And I think that's also where I saw that design thinking does really make a difference. Because you're able to discover that much sooner. Not that we spent that much time. I think having a year to figure something out in a new market and all that is probably pretty normal. But I think accepting it is something that I got from design thinking. So not pushing it beyond what was reasonable when we had the different results that we had.
Synne, you mentioned something very important: the opportunity to actually pivot and act accordingly with design thinking. Now, from what you learned in Boston and what you were practicing in Kenya at that moment, what else did you find out that design thinking is a plus?
So I think that was a very hands-on experience, and of course, since then I've been very lucky to be able to have many more hands-on experiences here in my work with Human Inc. But also being able to learn it in a very different way by not just learning a bit in school and then applying it, but now having much more of a formal background in design thinking. So through those experiences, I think the first one is understanding customers. So making sure that when you're trying to build something new, you really understand who you're building it for and understand the pain points that it's solving. I think that's the most important thing, and really having that validated. An idea is great, but what impact does that idea solve, and is this something that customers or the market actually really needs or wants? I think the ability to pivot, as you mentioned, so the ability to test something out, build something very small scale, test it, and then have some data so you can make decisions smarter and faster, and therefore with lower risk. I think there's also a lot of intangible or mindset pieces to design thinking about how you approach teamwork, different ways of collaborating, how you become a bit more creative by having certain prompts, certain tools, certain frameworks. So those are maybe more other things that can help in terms of how you're able to contribute to a team or contribute to a project or a process, and that are maybe harder to learn than the fact that you need to go out and do user research. That can be something you almost mechanically do, but the mindset bits of it can be super impactful, but also harder to adopt and harder to learn.
That's a good point, because one thing is what you see, like for example, the Agile Manifesto. Another thing is what your actual clients or the society you are trying to help, you see the benefit from. So we talk about water in Kenya. Can you tell us a little more, especially for the ones who are unaware of this, why it's important? Of course, everybody drinks water, but for that particular part of the world, and how design thinking help it for that society.
So I don't think I'm the right person to speak to that anymore, because it's been quite some time since I've been there, and I know there's a lot of different innovation agencies that are utilizing design thinking to come up with either social enterprises or also other type of solutions that can be beneficial to people. So I can't speak too much about how it's being used today because it's so long ago. What I did was a small little venture from a venture builder in just one little part. We use design thinking the same way that I would use it now with my clients, so to discover something and to try to figure out what we could do. I think in the NGO world or in the world of impact, I know there is a lot of companies that do it. The UN has a huge innovation center, for instance, but I don't think I'm the right person to talk about that.
Now, after the adventure that you have in Kenya, what happened next?
So then I came to Malaysia. So I came to Malaysia and I ended up connecting with my CEO here, Chris, who was at that point maybe 1 or 2 years into the adventure that is Human Inc. We had some clients. We were focused mainly on learning, so upskilling people into new methodologies such as design thinking. We had a couple of clients, and I became part of that team to help be a part of delivering those solutions to clients. Of course, I started off with more of maybe more guts than skills because I was still pretty fresh. I had a couple of experiences only. I had some university background and I've tried it out in the field, but of course it's not enough to be able to really create impact. So it's more about being a part of the team, having a lot of amazing learning opportunities for me as a person, and also in this innovation space, what does that look like? What does it look like for corporates? What are challenges that corporates have that startups doesn't have? Startups' main challenge is money. Can we get funding, investment, and of course also customer centricity, but that probably cuts across. For corporates, it's different things. It's red tape, bureaucracy, mindsets, talent. Money is of course also a problem, but the way that they operate in terms of money investments is just very different. So getting to know that space, and then over time now feeling like a bit of an expert in that space.
So that means that all this journey gets you towards this level of expertise that says, I'm making an impact.
Yeah, absolutely.
So may I ask what is coming after this? Are you building something new? What is going on?
I think that's a good question. So I think the really great thing about Human Inc. is that I feel like we're trying to be a little bit ahead of our clients, and at least in tune with our clients in terms of how the market is maturing. I think there's a very, very big difference of what innovation meant to Malaysian companies 5 years ago versus what it means now. There has been a lot of investments into it. There are a lot of awareness around it in a very different way than what it used to be. So what's happening now is that there are both investment and expectations in terms of returns, outcomes is increasing. There's also a lot of new technology that some startups might be better than corporates in leveraging, and therefore some startups are cutting ahead, especially in certain industries, which is causing pressure on some industries and some corporates to really, really up their game when it comes to innovation, application of these methods, upskilling, implementing it as a part of their processes, of the way they do work, making sure that they have a culture that is really, really fueled by innovation, creating new terminology for it. So there's a lot of new value to create for corporates that they are now hungry for, maybe in a different way than before. So I would say now what I'm working on is more or less the same as I have been for the last few years, is to scale that impact in Human Inc. and be able to be a partner for the companies that are really, really serious about innovation, and also the ones that are just starting their innovation journeys, because there are some industries that are still kind of just getting their footing. And of course, we've been through that with a lot of companies, so we can help with both ends of the scale.
Scaling, change management, and innovation, these three kind of keywords actually are very intertwined if you think
Yeah,
about it.
very
So,
much so.
what are you seeing in those companies or in those clients that scale too quick? Because usually what we see from the business side is that, okay, there is a percentage of growth you have to achieve in order to uh, get enough escape velocity and become a unicorn. But if you scale too quick, then you are too thin and then you cannot go distance.
So I work more with larger corporates, so they normally don't have the problem of scaling too quick. They probably more have a problem of being a little bit too slow.
Okay.
But the experience that I do have with startup when it comes to scalability, and also speaking from Human Inc., who has scaled a lot over the few years. We were, 4 or 5 when I started, and now we're 30, something like that. So of course there's been some changes there. I think very often what happens is that people are either people are not ready for it somehow. There's a desire to scale in terms of maybe technology or in terms of client impact or something like that, but somehow we don't have the right people elements to support it. CHRO, for instance, is the C-suite that is hired last for most startups. So having someone dedicated to HR is very often hired very late in the process, and someone else is double hatting. And as we're scaling the team, what happens is that you get a new group of people in that is diluting the culture or potentially creating a new culture. And what then happens is that maybe efficiencies go down, ways of working are either forgotten or they're not formalized in a meaningful way that still allows for flexibility. So I think very often people can be one of the blockers to that. Of course, there's others. Technology isn't able to grow fast enough, or we're not able to figure it out, or customer demand wasn't what we thought it was, or we're not able to capitalize on what we thought we were going to capitalize on. So there can be many reasons, but I absolutely think people and culture is a major one to be able to figure out the other ones. If you don't have the right people and the right culture, then when one of these other problems occur, then it's going to be hard to get the company to gather and really work through it.
You mentioned these two particular elements, people and culture, and it's like one helps the another, or it's like one of those the chicken and egg problem. Nowadays, there is like a huge problem going on with access to talent, especially with the remote working, and many CEOs saying right now that the remote working was just an experiment. Which are your thoughts about it?
Okay, so I think there's a couple elements to that. There's the war of talent, and then there's the remote working question. I think in terms of the war of talent, I'm very glad that companies are being kept more accountable in terms of how they treat their employees, in terms of the type of employee value proposition that they are putting out there and offering, how they're thinking about treating and building employee experiences. And one of the reasons for it is because if people are happy in a company, then they're also contributing more. They're able to deliver more results, which again benefits customer experience, which again benefits the bottom line basically. So I think it's great that there are some shifts in terms of maybe the power dynamic between employees and employers. When it comes to remote working, I absolutely believe that we need a bigger talent pool, and I love the fact that there's ability to work across countries, across continents, so that we're able to really leverage different type of talent. Of course, having a remote work environment or a hybrid work environment is challenging because it does create a pressure on our employee experience. We do need to reimagine our employee experience a bit to actually meaningfully integrate it. So I think maybe that's where some companies are struggling to find what does that new employee experience look like that is allowing for people in office, people remotely, whether it's because they have a life outside of work that they want to take care of, kids or something, so there's flexibility is perfect for them, or whether it's because we want to access talent pool in different markets than what we had before.
These address the first window, which is the people. But now the second window I want to address with you is the culture. I don't want to sound like Dan Snyder, the former CEO of the Washington Commanders team, that the culture is actually very good, but the culture never was good in that team. Given that you have a different background than most of the local Malaysians, how is the culture in the team, and how you can make the culture very good?
Okay, so I think as much as I would love to take credit for culture, I don't think I can, not fully. I think when it comes to the difference in culture, not from a corporate culture, organizational culture, but if we're thinking about more geographical culture, I think as anyone coming into a new country that isn't my own, I think it's important to understand what does the culture look like and try to find ways of being respectful for that. Of course, I also think it's a benefit that I sometimes bring a different perspective because I have experienced different type of cultures, living in Kenya, living in Norway, living in the US, and also spent a bit of time in Canada and also here. So I've seen different type of cultures and also how it feeds into how we do work and how we think about work and how we think about community at work and all of that. So I think coming here, it's very important for me to both be respectful and understand Malaysian culture, be able to see how can that be leveraged, because there's great things about it, and then also being able to offer an outside perspective to say, hey, these are some things that maybe we can rethink, and this is how it looks in other places. What does that look like if we were to bring that back into a Malaysian context?
Happy that you are mentioning that, because I would like to ask you, which are the little differences you have seen between these regions you've been so far? I can help with one, because maybe here people have been saying, hey, wait a second, when I'm about to eat something, I have a fork and I have a knife. But here they don't have a knife. They usually give you a spoon. And then it's like, okay, how can I use this? And then some people spot, never eat with a spoon before. Like, yeah, a spoon and a fork. Yeah, I'm still getting used to it.
You're still getting used to it. Now I can't have a knife anymore because I'm so used to the spoon.
Okay. So what else have you seen?
So these are maybe more small kind of tangible things. So there are some of that. I would say as, let's say, just driving, being a chauffeur. Kenya was absolutely crazy. Malaysia is less crazy. In Norway, everyone followed the rules. So that's pretty fun just to think about. The first time I was driving a car here, I was scared because I didn't really know what to do, and if I was waiting, then I never got anywhere. In Kenya, I didn't even dare to drive a car, way too much. And then here, and then in Norway, of course, everything is okay.
We have the lights.
Now we have the lights. That's great. I think more, if you're going to think about that from a business perspective, some of the things that I've noticed, I think here in Malaysia, it is a bit more of a hierarchical society than what it is, for instance, in the US and in Norway. It's also more of I don't want to say introverted, because then I feel like people more associate that with countries like Japan. But it's less direct, it's more indirect communication quite often. So in, of course, the US, it's quite loud and direct, and you kind of say it as it is. I would say same in Norway as well, not maybe to that extent, but it can still be quite, okay, what went wrong here, what do you think, and more that. I think here in Malaysia, to get people to share those type of opinions, you have to approach it differently to get people to feel comfortable sharing those things. It doesn't necessarily come naturally. So there's not to say that people don't have opinions and not to have good ideas. They absolutely do, but in a corporate context, if you want that type of culture where people are bringing a lot of ideas, then either as leaders or in the culture that you're building, you need to build in mechanisms where people feel comfortable sharing it, because it's not maybe something that comes naturally from a geographical cultural perspective.
Yeah, those are very important things, because at the beginning, people doesn't know, okay, should I say hi, or what kind of gesture should I use? This. And then when you learn the interaction with the people, is like, okay, now I see it. Yeah, it's actually very helpful. A little thing that I'm still trying to understand is why so many holidays.
In Malaysia, Oh, well, I think because it's such a. We have a lot of holidays in Malaysia, by the way. I don't know, I think it's like number 4, 3 maybe, in terms of top holidays in the world. So we have a lot of public holidays. I think the main reason for that is because it consists of so many different nationalities and ethnicities. Not nationalities, what am I talking about? So many different ethnicities, they're all Malaysians. So you have Indians, you have the Malay, and you have the Chinese all coming together. And that also means that there's a lot of different religions, and they all have their religious holidays. So therefore, we are very lucky to have religious holidays from Christianity, from Islam, from Hinduism. I don't know if there's much from Buddhism, maybe
Yeah,
so.
there was one.
Yeah.
I remember very clear, because in the first week of May, everybody was off on Monday, which was May Day.
Yeah,
Labor Day is celebrated in September in the US.
yeah.
And then on the day number 3 was on Thursday, there was a Buddhist day.
Okay.
So imagine another day off,
A lot of days off.
another week off.
Yeah, it's true. So we have a lot of, and then there's the Malaysian holidays like Malaysia Day and things like that. So there's a lot of public holiday here because of that, which is really, really nice. But also compared to Norway, the legalized paid holiday that you get from work is a lot less. In Norway you have a lot, so here you have a lot less. I think a lot of people who doesn't have so much holiday really appreciate the fact that it's more public holidays, so they get to spend time with family, loved ones, and so on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because one thing is to celebrate with the family, and another thing is to plan towards, let's say, a trip. Let's say it's time to go to this other place.
Yeah.
Take advantage of the long holidays. Or like people in Singapore, literally they cross the border. Hey, let's take advantage of this long holiday and let's visit Malaysia. Now, there has been something that a lot of people here have been talking too much and actually experienced personally. So I need to ask you, during the holidays of the Hari Raya, how has been the open houses for you?
I haven't. So I'm a vegetarian, and let's just say that Raya is definitely not a holiday made for vegetarians.
Oh,
I
okay.
can eat all the sweets, but they have all these amazingly smelling curries and rendang and very, very tasty food. So for that reason, I'm a very difficult open house guest. So the few I have been to, they feel a little bit bad because I end up just eating desserts. But it's okay. I still love it. But I do take it as an opportunity to travel. So Malaysia is a hub where there are so many different places that you can go and you can travel to very easily. We talked about this a little bit before. It's so easily accessible. So when we have 2, 3, 4 days off, then I often take that as an opportunity to leave Malaysia and go somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Now, outside Malaysia, you have other countries in the region, the Southeast Asia. Given your time that you have been so far, which have been the other places in the region that you have explored?
In Southeast Asia, I have been everywhere except for Laos and Timor-Leste. So I have been to the Philippines, which was amazing. I've been to Thailand, Singapore. I've been to Cambodia, Vietnam. Yeah. Hope I didn't miss any there. Indonesia.
So that means that you already have like a tier list. Okay, this place is good, this place can be better, which are for personal reasons, of course. But that means that you highly recommend people to come to Southeast Asia.
Yes, absolutely. I think Southeast Asia is an amazing place to live. First of all, it's a very different experience, especially for me. It's a very different cultural experience. Even the climate is different. The food is different. I love the food, especially in Malaysia. I kind of have to say that because if not, Malaysians would get very mad at me. But
I can let the people mad.
but I also love the food here, just as genuine.
Guess what?
What?
When you talk with Malaysians about food, if you tell them, hey, this food is good, must be from Thailand, totally agree. All of the sudden it's like, yeah, it's good. Yeah, we know that. But when you talk with them, like, this food is good, so this is from Singapore. All of a sudden they are annoyed. It's like, wait a second, what is going with you? And it's like,
True.
those little things.
Yeah.
And of course, little caveat. When we mention about the Thailand food, it's because it's the best Thailand food, the Thai style. Because other people told me that in the region, the best Chinese food that you can find can be in Singapore, but the best Indian food you can find is in Malaysia. which is like, wow, I never knew about it. But it's the amalgamation of recipes and styles from different places that makes this like a hidden hub as well.
Yeah, true. I agree with you. I don't know about the Chinese food in Singapore, and I do think some Malaysians would get angry with you for saying that. But I think they have good food both places. But of course, Malaysia is where I stay and where I've tried the most types of food.
Mm-hmm. That's true. So, here in the west side of the peninsula or something, or whatever they call it right now, is very different from what you people see in Sarawak and Sabah. Have you had a chance to be there?
Yes, I had a chance to both go to Sabah and Sarawak. I have been exploring a couple of places. I love the islands outside of Sabah. Crystal blue water, really, really good for diving. Yeah, just really amazing place to be. Quite different vibe than here, a little bit culturally different.
Can you explain?
It's quite close to the Philippines, but also close to Indonesia. So there's a bit of a mix between culture and like as you may or may not be aware, Philippines is kind of considered a little bit like the Latin.
Yeah,
South,
hablo en
of
español allá.
Southeast Asia.
Ellos hablan español.
So it's like a lot of music and quite loud, so it's a little bit different. So I think some parts of Sabah has that a little bit more, and it's quite relaxed. It's of course there are some bigger city. There's like Kuching or KK where of course it's still city life, but it seems quite relaxed. People are having a relaxed time and very very friendly.
Yeah, Kota Kinabalu is also a nice place. A friend of mine lives there. And also she was Gina Smith, she explained it that in the past, when Malaysia was still forming, Philippines wanted to get Sabah.
I'm not surprised. There's still disputes over the South China Sea today, so.
Still today, like after 60 years, and it's like, hey, just move on. It's time to get things going. It's time to get things going. Yeah, such an amazing place, such an amazing region. Now, if we can discuss a little more about with this weather, of course people cannot do snow skiing. So what people usually will find here that you cannot find in other places?
That's a hard question because you can find almost anything anywhere. You can even ski in Malaysia. You just have to do it inside. So I think if there's something you really want to do, you can probably find a place to do it. As a foreigner, I love the weather here. So I really like the fact that it's so hot. I know a lot of local Malaysians find it too hot, especially in the middle of the day. So there's a lot of mall culture here. A lot of malls with a lot of AC where people tend to go spend their time. I would say something that is great about Malaysia, also other countries, but they have really nice beaches here. So going to the beach is great. Maybe not in KL, but outside of KL.
Like Cheratin.
Sheraton is nice. If you go further up the coast, there's a lot of beaches and also islands in Terengganu. So I would say that's something that I can go to the beach in Norway, but maybe like one day a year because the weather is quite unpredictable. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but the window is quite limited. While here you can spend a lot more time going to different beaches and exploring. So I would say that's one thing. I also think that the food culture here is amazing. We already talked about that, but there's a lot of those type of experiences that you can have.
Talking about experiences, because I love to run, I did a Kuala Lumpur marathon
Nice.
a while ago. Boston, the places that you have the cold weather are nice because you can literally run every day. But here, the humidity is a huge factor. I also remember running in Bangkok. It can be a little taxing, even if you do it early in the morning. But there is a huge running culture here in KL. And also the hills, because that's something that, for example, from Houston, is usually flat. The marathon in Houston is relatively easy because it's in the winter and literally it starts at 6 o'clock in the morning. But here we have to start 3 o'clock in the morning when it's still chilly, and then around 7, 8 o'clock the sun hits and hits hard, the humidity hits hard, and it's like you still have to do the heels. It can be a little problematic. But why I'm bringing this up? Because when there is a will, there is a way. If you find a place, of course there's going to be a place, just go and do it. But then it's about the discipline itself. Because the motivation, okay, I'm going to do this, and then all of a sudden the motivation fades. Discipline remains. Especially when you finish like a big race, or all of a sudden some of your friends already have to live somewhere else. It's like the motivation fades, but hey, the discipline it sticks with you even right after they leave. So, given that you've been many years in Malaysia, you've got friends that came and then friends that then left. So, kind of from the professional and the personal angle, how can you deal with that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So I think that's something that everyone who chooses to be an expat has to both live with and understand how that happens. When you're in a different country than your own, unless you end up having a lot of local friends, which I luckily do. So I have quite a few local friends that are more stable and based here permanently. So of course that helps to create some stability. But amongst the other communities that are more transient, that's definitely something that you have to just adjust to. I think that's the good thing about maybe what I'm trying to do for all my clients is to help them navigate change and being able to build resilience. So I guess from a personal perspective, when it comes to that, having that change in your personal life, it's about finding ways to overcome it or to be okay with it and to accept it, and then therefore find strategies to navigate it. The other thing is that luckily now there's a lot of tools to be able to stay in touch. So the fact that someone leaves doesn't mean that they have to exit your life forever. But I also think that sometimes by knowing that things are temporary, you also appreciate it in the moment even more. So you make more efforts to spend time together, you make more effort to go on a trip together. So you also are intentional about how you spend your time because you know that you're not as time rich that you can go on forever.
I'm happy that you are mentioning that because nowadays our society are having a crisis of attention. All of a sudden our time span is decreasing, and that also correlates to being present in the moment. Because sometimes we assume that we are going to have more moments like this in the future, and then all of a sudden reality hits. So, given that this kind of attention span product has been going on uniformly across many generations nowadays, how do you deal with attention span? Are you good with like reading a book, things like that?
Me? Well, I'm not a big. I don't procrastinate, so I think that creates a bit of a benefit. If I do something, I will do it. But I also am maybe one of the few people that really loves multitasking. So I actually like doing kind of a little bit of different things at once. And I enjoy that way of working. And I know that a lot of people feel like multitasking is a scam or it's not real. You can't really do it, and I'm sure that's true. But I like it because it means that I can be productive in one area, and when I get a little bit bored of it, then I can be productive in another area. And I have a lot of belief in trying to get things done as fast as possible, so that I have time to do other things. So how can I be efficient and productive so that I have time to do other things outside of work or other things that I don't really want to do?
Yeah, multitasking. I remember a friend of mine, she wrote my will just in case, and she always saying that multitasking as a lawyer has to be very important to manage the chunk of times. But personally, how can I deal with the attention span? Sometimes when I read a book, I realize that it becomes a little difficult if the topic is not very interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
The same can be applied with, let's say, 3 hour, 4 hour podcast like the Joe Rogan or the Lex Friedman. It's like, okay, if the topic is interesting, I can go all the way. Otherwise, it's like chunks. But I have to say that I cannot apply the same when I go to see a movie. Because it's like I need to check in advance if that's going to be a good movie, and then just go for the 2 hours. Because if it's going to be 3 hours like Avatar, that was like 3 hours or 4 hours, it's like it can be a little slow. So moments to deal with attention span, you can still compromise, but as long as you are committed with your goal, it can be done. And that can also be a way to address multitasking because, yeah, some people may say it's a scam. Maybe because you don't believe in that, or you found problems to practice it, or they are not the right tools at the right moment. So there's a lot to be discussed, to be honest.
Well, I also maybe think that, of course, sometimes what you're trying to do, as you said, if you have a goal to it, you can do it. I think a lot of times, maybe if it's productive for you or something you need to do, then absolutely. If not, then I would also say that if it's not something you need to do, then why would you waste your time?
Mm-hmm.
Then stop it. Do something else.
Mm-hmm. Because there is always something important.
Yeah. So if the book that you're reading isn't catching you or capturing you, and you don't really have to read it because you want to learn the specific skill or because of, I don't know, you're in university or whatever, then just don't read it. Stop it. It's fine. I don't think it's a shame to give up on something if it's not giving you anything.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. The levels of return, the investments and the level of return. Yeah, that's true. Talking about levels of return, given that you have been experiencing this career so far, and going back to your the moments that you mentioned that it was Boston one of those places, given that there were other places to choose, maybe this is an unfair question, but how can we compare? I know how to ask now. Given your career so far, which has been the biggest compromise you have done, and why that was your biggest compromise?
Good question. I don't think I have had to do so many compromises, and I think I don't feel that way because I feel very excited, happy, and passionate about what I do. So I like my work. I also like where I'm at in terms of geographically, also in my career. So I think because of that and feeling happiness, there hasn't been so much compromise, or at least not feelings of it. There's been choices, absolutely. There's been decisions of doing one thing or another thing. But I've always felt like I've landed on what was right for me, and it doesn't feel like I had to give so much up because I've been happy where I'm at, and I am happy and continue to be happy where I am. So maybe ask me again in 5 years, and I'm sure there will be something. But for now, I feel quite lucky that I haven't had so much. But some things that I had to give up, that I'm okay with having to give up, is of course things like spending time with family. My family is back in Norway and not here. So that's of course something that I have to be okay to give up on if I want to continue to stay here. So those are more things about living abroad, I would say.
Yeah, also that reminds me something that is like, yeah, about the compromises. There was a quote: "You are not stuck in a place if the place is really too good. It's just you're growing."
Yeah.
And something about the place is not the buildings, it's not the infrastructure, it's the people around.
I agree.
Because once the people go, it's like, is this the same place? So, yeah, those are two elements to discuss when people are doing compromises in that regard. If I have to reflect in a compromise that I've done, mm, maybe one of the things that I should have been more agile is to decide to do my MBA quicker. It was during the downturn of the 2015 in the oil and gas industry that a lot of people in Houston decided to leave, but I decided to stay because I consider that place, hey, they gave me a shot. Hey, let's try to give it back. And of course, it was very hard years. I would say that not many companies were hiring, not many dividends were paid. All of a sudden, oil and gas got a very bad rap. Hurricane Katrina hit in 2017. A lot of personal things happened, and it's like all of a sudden, a friend calls me like, "Fabian, what are you doing?" And it's like, "Here chilling. What's up? There's gonna be a hackathon by Halliburton. We're gonna do something with AI and blockchain." And it's like, "Yeah, are they gonna give food or not?" And it's like, "Yeah, just come." So that happened to be like a kind of a push in the narrative because once I happened to win the hackathon using blockchain, all of a sudden the clients that I was helping them to calculate oil and gas, they began to ask me about how they use the technology for their business. And I was like, I should learn more business skills. And one thing led to another. And then a friend of mine, if you're watching Pervis, he gave me a ticket to apply to MIT for free because usually it costs money. And then during the process, he was like, "Why don't you consider this LA program here? We do actual learning. You're going to be in Southeast Asia. We give you a good scholarship and things like that." And it was like, that sounds so nice. So I happened to make that leap. And then I have to recall a quote by Nelson Mandela. Make your choices not because of fear, but because of hope. And I wish I had that push years before, because maybe things can be different. But nowadays, I guess something that I can live with.
Yeah, I think so. And I also think that if you had that push a little bit earlier, then you would have maybe been a little bit of a different place now. But at the same time, it's also not that long. We're not talking 10, 15 years here. Maybe you had to have those other experiences before you were ready for this one.
That's a good corollary, a good commentary.
Maybe. Let's see. Give me something to maybe not.
Yeah, that's true. Now, besides the things that are done in the profession, personally, are you running a podcast or are you running miles around the city? What else Synne does to say, hey, I like Malaysia?
Okay, yeah, good question. So I travel as much as I can. So I go on trips quite often to different places in Southeast Asia, different places in Malaysia. So I would say that's one thing that I do. Besides that, when it comes to more on the day-to-day, I like to work out. So I like to do sports, strength training, these type of things. And then spend time with friends. As I mentioned, I think when you know you have shorter period of time, then intentionality and being present and seeing them is important. So I try to spend time with my friends as well.
Now, I want to touch this dimension that you talk about the traveling, because when you are in US, it's like you just have the big luggage and then you just go around. But here is like the whole game goes around the carry-on. And I cannot stress enough, if you have a good carry-on, just keep it. Don't sell it. Don't try to repair it. Because I can tell you something. I was going to Hong Kong, and the carry-on I have is actually a typical American carry-on that has like 2 windows and you put the suit and everything. The problem is the structure itself can be a little heavy. And then all of a sudden, they will say it's too heavy. What do you mean? I already waited. No, you had to pay extra. No, not really. So what ended up happening is that I had to use my jacket and put another shirt just to be under the limit and then go. Because then in the Malaysia airport, they were like actually measuring before checking the passport. Is your carry-on good or not? And it's like, what is the whole drama with the carry-on? Because going back from Hong Kong to here, they were like, oh, they don't care. So how has been your experiences using the carry-on in these areas?
I would say that since I go mainly on weekend trip and smaller trips, then I often just travel light. I think it's a little bit because of depending on the airline that you travel with and the price of the ticket. AirAsia is a low cost carrier and airline, so I assume that's where you were flying. And if so, then that's how they make money, right? The tickets are cheap. All the add-ons are also quite cheap, but still more expensive. And Malaysia is the hub, so it naturally often is maybe a little bit stricter here because they have people. But I would say it's way less strict than, for instance, some of the flights in Europe. I know Ryanair and those that can be even more intense, I think, in terms of checks and baggage.
Yeah, that's gonna be a good point to address. Because I remember traveling in AirAsia, it's like, okay, very affordable, but I wanted to charge me like 300 ringgits just for one shirt extra. It's like, no way, no how. And then inside the plane, it's like, if you want water, it's gonna be 10 ringgits. Like, it's water. what is going to be next. But yeah.
So it's different, but it's a different business model, right? So they have chosen a different business model, which has been very successful for now, or until now, at least fairly so. They have a lot of customers. Yeah. Or all airlines are somehow struggling a little bit now after the pandemic. So let's see what comes out winning.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Right now, from what I learned, is that the manufacturers of the planes are the ones winning.
Oh yeah, I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah. Now, keeping that there is a lot of things going on in the society of Malaysia. We will not have enough time to discuss what is going on with the discussions of the Bumi Petras, with the new legislation or new elections. Those are pictures, and we don't want to be prisoners of the moment because we would like this message to go around more and more often. Is this the same Malaysia you have seen the first time you came here?
I think like all countries, there's evolvement in terms of different people, culture, and I also think that as I have become more familiar with Malaysia and created different connections and so on, I see new parts of it. So how much it has changed in 6 years, I'm not really sure. I think one thing that I see is that because I'm hiring quite a lot of talent, I can see that the quality of talent has definitely gone up in terms of the fact that a lot of people have a higher education and have also utilized that in a lot of relevant experiences. So I think overall also the number of expats in Malaysia is going down a bit because there's more local talent to be able to support roles and who has different experiences that are able to be a part of the growth of the different companies, or the growth that companies are looking for now. So that's really nice to see. Of course, Human Inc. has also been on like we used to be a smaller company and now becoming a bit more well known. So maybe we are able to attract different type of talent than what we were before as well. But I also see it in other companies that I work with that the number of expats somehow goes down a little bit, and it seems like there's a focus on talent, and also as I mentioned, with talent making demands to companies of what they want in terms of whether or not they stay or go. I think that has also created maybe a culture for other types of people or people that were there before to maybe find new ways of creating value.
Yeah, it's true. Because the level of talent has been going up, and fascinating that you mentioned that the amount of expats is decreasing compared to what you saw many years ago. I can recall the words of a friend, Rohit Menon, who is right now in Australia. He mentioned something that was going on in Vietnam at the same parallel. And it's like, yeah, for some reason, it's like things are going well for them.
I also think the pandemic had something to do with that because the pandemic here was hard. There was lockdowns for a very long time, like in I would say a lot of other Southeast Asian countries as well. Not all, but there was very strict regulations. So I think that also made maybe flux of expats go out and wanting to go back to Europe because things were more open there, or back to the US where things was very open. So I think that could have also been one effect, and I don't know how many new has come in, but overall, this is just my observation. But this is how I see more on the talent pool and how things are maybe shifting a bit in the labor market.
Yeah, now something I can disclose because by business reasons, I happen to be involved in some of the semiconductors talents going on and panels. The Malaysian engineers, it's not that they don't love this country, but they got a better offer to go to Taiwan, they will go there. And then there is a gap of talent. The Malaysian government doesn't want to fill that gap. And for some reason, it's like, what is going on? And we got people from other companies that are based in Singapore and also based here because for the semiconductor area, Malaysia is a pivotal point in shipping, and it's like, we need people. Can you help us? And it's like, we are talking. And it's like, you cannot just talk. You need to act because how long you want to defer all of these problems? And it can be a little troublesome because guess who's benefiting from this? India. This is something I talked with some friends who are also in the business school. They are putting a lot of money, like the data consulting services. They are opening semiconductor fabrics because they know that Malaysia is not going to hire either foreigners or to level the salaries for the locals. It's like, hey, you need to level up. You need to put your game up. Otherwise, regionally, this is something that is happening. So, given what you mentioned, I really have high hopes that Malaysia wakes up, at least in the semiconductor industry, and be a main player.
Okay, yeah, that I do not. Ugh, my tongue is twisting a little bit. That I don't know anything about, but interesting point. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because everybody wants to have very nice laptops or the cell phones, and it's like, I remember back in the States, it was a huge crisis in 2021. All of a sudden, the used cars were like
Yeah.
$10,000, and then the new cars, they needed the chips, and there were no chips.
Yeah.
It was a huge problem. And then people are stealing the catalytic converters because it have a little of gold and palladium, and you can resell those things. It was a problem. It was a problem. But, hey, you need chips. People like chips, not the potato chips, okay? People like the semiconductor chips, better phones, better cars, everything. Yeah. So there are always high hopes of Malaysia that goes better
Yeah.
with time. Now, the following can be a question that can be a little into retrospective, but there will be some John Cines watching right there. Maybe some John Cines with Lolas and Chaos next to them watching this. And I would like to ask you, what piece of advice could you give to your younger self?
To my younger self, mm, that's a good question, and probably something I should have thought about before, because it's not. It's a question that I think comes up quite often. I think maybe one thing would be to stay fearless, and I feel like I have managed to do that. But taking some risks can definitely be worth it, whether it's moving in different parts of the world, and being okay with the uncomfortable. So trying to be comfortable in the uncomfortable is something that I have learned to be, and by nature has seeked towards. But I guess it felt very scary making some of those choices at the moment. And I think I would have told myself that it's okay, it will be fine regardless of what you do.
Yeah, that's true. I cannot find a better way to conclude this episode. Thank you, Synne, for doing this.
Thank you so much.
So, how can people find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Synne Støhl. I guess you can link it somewhere. Yeah, add me there.
Fantastic. Well, please stay safe, and for people watching, please stay safe out there, and see you when I see you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
And that's it. Bye.